This is the notes for section 10.7, surface area of a sphere. If you haven't done so already, make sure you pause the video at this time and read the section before continuing on. This is going to be our last kind of a new formula for this chapter. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at finding the surface area of a sphere, and the formula for doing that is 4 pi r squared. Now in the book they spent a little bit of time kind of going through how to derive that formula. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with that. You'll do a little bit more with the derivation of these type of formulas as you get to calculus. I'm just going to spend more time right now with the ability to use a formula like this one. So this is definitely a formula that you should be familiar with. Surface area of the sphere is 4 pi r squared. Alright, it says in example 1 here, it says assume the moon is a smooth sphere with a diameter of 3,474.8 kilometers. Find the surface area. Well, I know that the surface area is equal to 4 pi r squared. So the only thing that I need to know is the radius. Well, they gave me the diameter, and I know that the radius will be half of the diameter. So if I take 3474.8 and divide it in 2, I know the radius would then be 1734.7. Excuse me, 1737.4. I wrote that down wrong. This would be 7 here. Okay, so if that's the radius, to find the area, the surface area that is, I'm going to take 4 times pi times that value squared. This is exactly how I'd want you to write it down too. Just plug in that value. Now is when you can go to your calculator and we can go ahead and approximate that. So let's do that. So if I do that on my calculator, I'm going to get this value. Now some of you might, if you put it into your calculator, might get an E on your value. You might want to, if you do, if you get an E in your value, you might want to look at changing your settings so that it's on float. The decimal point is on float, so when we get big numbers like that, it won't automatically put it in scientific notation. So the surface area then would be a little less than 38,037,932,328 if I round it to the nearest square kilometer, and that would be my units on that, so I'd want to put that at the end here, square kilometers. Alright, number 2 here asks us to find the surface area again, just like the last problem. The difference is this time, instead of giving us the diameter, it gives us the volume. Well, the nice thing about circles and spheres is that all of whether it's volume or area or circumference, they're all related to one thing, and that is the radius of that circle. So if I know the volume, I can use the volume to solve for the radius, and then once I know the radius, I can use it to find the surface area. So I'm going to start by writing down the fact that the surface area is equal to 4 pi r squared. And now my goal is to figure out what that r is. So I'm going to use the volume. Well, I know volume of that sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. So, and I also know that the value of that volume is 288 pi. So I'm going to plug that in here. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to solve this for r. And that's where the majority of our work is going to come into play here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have a pi on both sides. I have all multiplication on both sides. So in essence, I can cross out the pi's. Now I need to get rid of the 4/3, so I'm going to do that by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal, which is 3/4. If I do that, on this side over here, the 4/3 and the 3/4 are going to cancel out, and I'm left with r cubed. Now on my calculator, I can take 3/4 of 288. And if I do that, I get 216. So that leaves me with the radius cubed being equal to 216. Now to find r, then I have to take the cubed root of both sides. So if I take the cubed root of r cubed, that's just r. And now I'm going to take the cubed root of 216. Okay. Cubed root of 216. And we find that that is 6. So the value for the radius then would be 6. So I put over here 6 feet for my radius. Now I'm going to take that value and I need to plug it in for r here, because my goal here is once again is to find the surface area, not just the radius of the sphere. So the surface area then would be equal to 4 times pi times 6 squared. And let's leave this one as an exact value. So if I take 4 times 6 squared and I leave the pi alone, that will give me my answer. Well, 6 squared is 36. So really I have 36 times 4, which you can either do in your head or if you want to use your calculator, either way. But if I take 36 times 4, I get 144. So that means the surface area is equal to 144 pi. And since we're talking about cubic feet for the volume, then the surface area, since we're talking about area, would be in square feet. So this would be the answer I'm looking for. Number 3 asks us to find the surface area and the volume of a hemisphere. Remember, a hemisphere is a half a sphere with a diameter of 56 centimeters. Well, whether we're finding surface area or volume, in both cases we need to know the radius in order to find them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the diameter to help me find the radius. Well, I know that the radius will always be equal to half the diameter, so it's going to be equal to 56 divided by 2, which is equal to 28. So the diameter of this is 28 centimeters. Now, if I'm looking at finding the surface area, let's do that first. Well, I know the surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared. But since I'm finding a hemisphere, it's going to be half of that. Therefore, in this case, it's going to be not 4 pi r squared, but 2 pi r squared. So that's what we would want to write down here, is 2 pi r squared. And then if I'm looking at the volume, well, the volume of the sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. But I want to find it for a hemisphere, so I'm going to divide that by 2. Well, if I do that, and some of you have trouble with this, the pi r cubed can stay alone, but if I have 4/3 divided by 2, think about that, I'm just going to pull that part over here. Dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. Therefore, I would have the same as 4/6 or 2/3. So the volume would be equal to 2/3 pi r cubed. Okay? So now all that's left for me to do for both of these is plug in my radius, which we already know. So I have 2 times pi times 28 squared. And over here I have 2/3 times pi times 28 cubed. So those are my two values. Now what I want to do is I want to plug those into my calculator. I'm going to get exact values for these. So the first one, I'm just going to take 28 squared times 2. And as you can see, when I do that, I get 1,568. Therefore, my surface area will be 1,568 pi. And then we're talking about centimeters for our radius, so it would be centimeters squared, because we're talking about an area. And then for the volume, I'm going to go and I'm just going to take 2/3, and I'm going to enter that as a fraction times 28 cubed. And if I do that, if we're going to stay with the exact values here, I get 43,904 divided by 3. So then I would take that times pi. So we get this. And then once again, we're talking about centimeters for our radius. Therefore, my volume will be cubic centimeters. So those would be the two exact value answers.